Liam Carter stepped off the bus with nothing but a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a heart full of memories. His boots hit the familiar pavement of his childhood hometown, though now it barely resembled the place he had once known. After serving overseas for 8 long years, Liam had finally come home. No cameras, no grand welcome, just the quiet hush of a town that had moved on without him. He hadn't told anyone he was coming back. Not even his mother. He pictured the look on her face when she opened the door and saw him standing there. That image had kept him going during long nights on base and colder nights in the field. He was finally ready to reconnect with her, with the town, with the life he had left behind. But as he walked past the corner cafe, once buzzing with neighbors and clinking coffee mugs, it was nearly empty. The park across the street, where kids used to laugh and chase one another, now sat still and overgrown. Even the air felt different, heavier, quieter. Liam had left with a lot of pain in his heart. Pain he never talked about, he'd buried it deep when he enlisted. And now, coming back, he could feel it stirring again. There were places here that knew his secrets. Streets that had seen his tears. Still, this was home, or at least it used to be. And no matter how much it had changed, Liam believed one thing hadn't. His mother, she'd be waiting. Maybe older, maybe more fragile, but still the same woman who used to sit on the porch every evening, watching the sun go down with hope in her eyes. Liam took a deep breath and kept walking. Liam's footsteps quickened as he approached the house he'd grown up in. The familiar sight of the white picket fence, the flowers his mother had always tended to, and the small porch where they used to sit together felt like a distant memory now. But as he turned the corner and caught his first glimpse of the house, a cold wave of disbelief washed over him. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, taller than he'd ever seen them. The paint on the house had faded and peeled in patches, exposing the worn wood beneath. The porch steps creaked under his weight, and the familiar smell of jasmine and fresh bread was gone. In its place, there was only silence, empty, suffocating silence. Liam's heart began to race. He walked toward the front door, only to find it boarded up with thick weathered planks. His mother's home, the one he had imagined in his mind every night, was no more than a forgotten shell. He stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then almost instinctively, he moved toward the mailbox, which was stuffed with yellowed envelopes, some spilling out onto the ground. "Can't believe it's been this long," a voice called out behind him. Liam turned to see an older man standing at the edge of the yard, his face weathered but familiar. It took a moment, but then Liam remembered. The neighbor, Mr. Harris, who had lived next door for as long as he could remember. "Your mom, she passed away 2 years ago," Mr. Harris said quietly, his eyes sad. "We tried to reach you, but no one could." The news hit Liam like a punch to the gut. His legs nearly gave out beneath him. Guilt and sorrow flooded his chest. He hadn't been there. He hadn't been there for her when she needed him most. The world he had come home to was nothing like he expected, and the weight of it all crushed him. Liam's feet moved almost automatically as he wandered the streets of his hometown, the places that once held so many memories now feeling like distant echoes. The park where he and his friends had spent countless summers playing baseball was now abandoned. The swings swayed in the wind, but no children laughed from the wooden structures. He stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle over him before he moved on. Next he walked to the old diner, the one his mother used to take him to on Sundays after church. The neon sign buzzed faintly, its colors dim and fading. Inside, the tables were empty except for a few older patrons who barely looked up as he passed. He didn't recognize anyone. He asked the waitress if she remembered a woman named Martha Carter. The young woman looked confused for a moment, before shaking her head. "I don't think so, sir. Sorry." Frustration began to build in Liam. So many faces had changed, so many things had been lost. He continued walking, stopping at the old school. The windows were boarded up, and the building looked dilapidated. The playground, once filled with the sounds of laughter, was quiet. His heart sank. Finally he made his way to the community center, the place he and his father had volunteered every weekend. The brick building, once lively with kids and after-school programs, was now a run-down shelter. Graffiti covered the walls, and the door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, a woman in her late 30s was organizing supplies. She looked up, her face softening when she saw Liam. "Can I help you?" she asked with a kind smile. I used to volunteer here, with my dad. Liam said. Do you know anything about a woman named Martha Carter? The woman's eyes flickered with recognition. Martha, yes, I remember her. She used to come here all the time. She was always helping out, bringing food, supplies. She was a good person. I'm Grace, by the way. Liam's heart skipped. You knew her well. Grace nodded, her expression thoughtful. She always spoke so fondly of her son. She'd talk about you, how proud she was. But she never mentioned you were away for so long. Liam listened intently as Grace spoke, her voice gentle but filled with a quiet sadness. Your mother came by here often, she said, her eyes distant as if recalling the past. In her last few years she helped as much as she could, volunteering, bringing in food, anything she could do for the people here. She was always so kind, always giving. Liam felt a knot tighten in his chest as he imagined his mother, in her later years, working tirelessly to help others when he hadn't been there to help her. She had been such a strong woman, always caring for others, but he hadn't even known. She never mentioned how hard things were for her, he murmured. Mostly to himself. Grace paused for a moment, her gaze softening. She mentioned a lot about you, Liam. But there's something she always said that I found unusual. Liam looked up, sensing the shift in her tone. What do you mean? Grace shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with what she was about to say. She used to talk about a little boy she looked after, someone she loved like her own. She mentioned him often, saying that she hoped you'd meet him one day. Liam's mind raced, trying to piece it together. A little boy? I don't have any siblings. I know, Grace said, her brow furrowing as she tried to recall the exact words. But she was so sure that you would one day meet him. She'd talk about how you two were meant to be a family, how he needed you just as much as you needed him. Liam's confusion only deepened. His mother had never once mentioned a brother, not even when he was younger. His life had always been about his bond with her, and the thought of another child in the picture seemed impossible. I don't understand. Who was he? Grace didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into the drawer of the desk she had been working at and pulled out an old yellowed envelope. She handed it to him, her fingers brushing against his. This came for you after your mother passed. I kept it safe, thinking maybe you'd return one day. She paused, her eyes searching his. It's from your mother. Liam hesitated for a moment, before carefully opening the envelope. His fingers trembled as he pulled out a letter written in his mother's familiar handwriting, the words smudged slightly with time. His heart pounded in his chest, as he could feel the weight of the mystery in the air, waiting to be revealed. Liam's hands shook as he unfolded the letter, the familiar scent of his mother's handwriting bringing an unexpected wave of emotion. He could almost hear her voice in his head as he began to read, though it was strained by the years that had passed. The narrator's voice, soft yet steady, begins to read aloud the heartfelt words from the letter, allowing the listener to feel the deep emotions woven through every sentence. Liam, my dear son. By the time you read this, I know you will have returned home. I hope this letter finds you with peace in your heart, though I fear you may be angry with me. I've kept something from you, something that I didn't know how to tell you, but I must confess it now, for I know you will need to understand before you can truly come home. When you left for service, I was devastated, Liam. The house felt so empty without you, and the loneliness was unbearable. I missed you every single day, and though I had so many memories of you, it wasn't enough. It never could be. That's when I met Ethan. Ethan was a little boy who needed help. His mother had abandoned him, and his heart was broken in ways I couldn't even understand. I was scared, Liam. Scared that if I brought him into our home, I would never be able to fill the empty space you left behind. But over time, I came to realize that love is not limited to one person, one child. There was room in my heart for both of you, even if I couldn't explain it well. I raised Ethan as my own, with all the love I could give, and though I tried to never compare him to you, Liam, he grew to be a special part of my life. I never spoke of him to you before, because I feared you'd feel replaced. I couldn't bear the thought of you thinking that you were anything less than my son. But Ethan, he was never a replacement. He was a gift that I hope you will come to understand. I want you to find him, Liam. I want you to find Ethan and bring him into your life. He needs you, just as much as you need him. Please don't leave him alone. Please don't let him grow up without the family he deserves. I love you both, with all my heart, your mother Martha. The letter fell from Liam's hands, and the room seemed to spin for a moment. His mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. His mother had kept this secret, had raised another child in the quiet of their home, without him knowing. And now, after all these years, she was asking him to find Ethan. The weight of her words settled heavily on his shoulders. He didn't know who Ethan was, or how to even begin searching for him, but one thing was clear: he couldn't turn away now. His mother's last wish was a plea that he couldn't ignore. Liam sat in stunned silence for a long moment, the letter clutched in his hand. His mother's words echoed in his mind, but it was the final plea, "Find Ethan," that pushed him forward. He couldn't let her down. He couldn't let Ethan grow up without knowing he had family, without knowing the love his mother had hoped he would give. "Grace," he finally spoke, his voice hoarse, "do you know where Ethan is now?" Grace's face softened with understanding, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "I'm afraid I don't know much about what happened after your mother passed. I remember Ethan being very quiet, very lost. When your mom died, he was placed into foster care." She hesitated before adding, "No one ever came looking for him. No one knew about you, about her son." Liam's chest tightened as the reality of her words sank in. No one knew about him. He had been out of the loop for so long, wrapped up in his own life, that he hadn't known the heartache his mother and this boy had suffered. Now, he had no idea where to begin. "I need to find him," Liam said, his voice unwavering now, though the weight of the task ahead hung heavy on him. Grace nodded sympathetically. "The only place I can think of is the Child Services office. They might have records." Liam didn't hesitate. He thanked Grace and made his way to the local Child Services office. The building felt cold, its sterile walls offering no comfort as he walked inside. He spoke with the caseworker, explaining his mother's wish, though the woman behind the desk looked at him skeptically. Still, she promised to look into the files. Liam left the office with little more than a promise and a list of numbers to call. Determined, he started making calls one by one, hoping that somewhere out there Ethan was waiting. Liam stood outside the group home, the air thick with anticipation and doubt. He had followed the trail of paperwork and phone calls, each step leading him closer to this moment. The building in front of him was nothing like the home he had imagined, but it was a place where Ethan had spent most of his life since his mother passed away. Taking a deep breath, Liam walked through the door, greeted by a woman who introduced herself as the facility's coordinator. She led him down a narrow hallway to a small, dimly lit room where Ethan sat alone, staring out the window. He was no older than Liam had imagined, a boy who had grown up without the warmth of a family, without the love his mother had hoped for him to have. Ethan looked up when Liam entered, his expression guarded and uncertain. The boy's eyes were distant, and there was a hesitation in the way he sat, as if he wasn't sure if he should acknowledge the stranger standing in front of him. "Hey Ethan," Liam said softly, his voice tentative. "I'm your brother, Liam. Your mom, she was my mom too." Ethan didn't respond immediately, his eyes flicking to the letter in Liam's hand. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. With a deep sigh, Liam walked closer and handed Ethan the letter, watching the boy's expression carefully. Ethan's fingers trembled as he opened the envelope, his eyes scanning the words that his mother had written. His face remained emotionless at first, but as he read further, the weight of the words seemed to settle into him. Slowly, tears began to gather in his eyes, and his lips quivered as he whispered, she really wanted me to know you." Liam's heart broke as he watched Ethan, the walls he had built around himself starting to crumble. The boy's quiet sobs were a silent acknowledgement that he had never been alone, not truly. Someone had come back for him, and it was Liam. The paperwork for becoming Ethan's legal guardian was a long and challenging process, but Liam was determined. Each form he signed, each call he made, only solidified his commitment to the boy who had once been a stranger, but was now his family. Slowly, step by step, the legalities fell into place. They moved into a small rental home just on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms, a cozy kitchen, and a small yard, but it was theirs. It was a new beginning. The first night in their new home, Liam made a simple dinner, and for the first time in a long while, the house felt full of warmth. They sat at the kitchen table, exchanging stories about their pasts, laughing at memories, and sharing quiet moments of understanding. As the days passed, Liam watched as Ethan slowly started to open up. The boy began to smile more, to laugh, to show the flickers of joy he had long kept hidden, and Liam found healing in the simple, quiet routines of daily life, the mundane moments that meant everything. The town, too, began to take notice. Liam's return wasn't as unnoticed as he had hoped. The whispers started again, but this time, they were filled with curiosity and even kindness. The town had its own way of healing, and with Liam and Ethan together, it felt like the pieces of both their pasts were finally falling into place. Grace, ever the caring soul, had organized a small gathering at the community shelter to welcome Liam and Ethan back. Word spread quickly, and soon, the shelter was filled with familiar faces from Liam's past, people he hadn't seen in years, some he barely remembered, gathered to offer their thanks and show their support. The room buzzed with conversation as townspeople took turns approaching Liam. Many thanked him for his service, their words sincere but heavy with unspoken guilt. Some apologized for losing touch, for not reaching out to him while he was away. The weight of those years apart hung in the air, but it was clear that people were eager to make amends. Liam nodded graciously, accepting their words but not allowing himself to dwell on the past. What mattered now was moving forward, and the town seemed ready to do the same. As the evening wore on, Liam found Ethan standing by the food table, his usual withdrawn demeanor, replaced by something new, a small smile. It was the first time Liam had seen his brother truly smile, and the sight was enough to make his heart swell with pride. In that moment, surrounded by his community and his new family, Liam knew they were finally starting to rebuild together. Months passed, and the quiet routine of life in their new home settled in. One afternoon, as Liam was cleaning out the old house, something caught his eye, a small dust-covered box hidden in the attic. Curiosity pulled him in, and when he opened it, he found several journals, each one filled with the handwritten words of his mother. As he flipped through the pages, Liam's heart grew heavy with each memory. But then, at the very bottom of the box, he found one last letter addressed to both him and Ethan. The handwriting was shaky, written just before his mother had passed. The narrator's voice reads aloud the poignant words from the letter. Liam, Ethan, my dear sons, I want to leave you with something before I go, something that I hope will help you understand the love I carried for both of you, even if I couldn't express it as I should have. Love isn't always loud, it's not always grand, sometimes it's quiet, found in letters kept, meals cooked, or children taken in when the world has turned its back. That's where love truly lives. Remember, family isn't who you start with, it's who stays. Liam's breath caught in his throat as he read the final line. It was the last thing his mother had left for him, a final lesson in love, one that would stay with him forever. The narrator concludes, Liam came home expecting to confront the past, but instead, he found a future built on the quiet strength of family, love, and the hope that sometimes, what we need most is already there, waiting to be discovered. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey with Liam and Ethan. It's a story of loss, healing, and the quiet power of family, the kind of love that doesn't always shout but always stays. We hope this story touched your heart as much as it did ours. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts with us. We love hearing from you, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a new story. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more heartfelt tales like this one. Thank you again for watching, and remember, family is who stays.